This program contains material that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The Mafia. A secret order dedicated to Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours.
You violate what you know about this life, and you're gonna burn in hell like the saint is burning in your hands.
Until recently, no one knew for sure exactly what the rules of Cosa Nostra were.
When you're a thug and a gangster, what rules do you have?
Now, for the first time, former mobsters speak out about the codes that govern their criminal world.
You followed the rules, and you know if you didn't, what the consequences were.
And how Cosa Nostra fell victim to the American dream. Palermo, Sicily, November 2007. Police mount an airborne assault on a villa high in the mountains. Their target, Salvatore Lo Piccolo, chief of Sicily's mafia clans. Nicknamed the Baron, Lo Piccolo has evaded capture for over 20 years. With guns drawn, police drag out the occupants. Within seconds, the cops have Lo Piccolo locked down. The police get a first glimpse of the mafia boss's hideout. Later, specialist search teams move in. Such is the mafia's fearsome reputation, cops wear ski masks to hide their identity. Strewn among coffee cups and cigars are piles of cryptic texts. Some contain coded references to business transactions. But one text stands out. It's a list typed in plain Italian. The heading reads, "I swear to be faithful to La Cosa Nostra. Should I betray, my flesh will burn." Police realize they have stumbled upon the mafia's rules of membership. The press will dub them the 10 Commandments of the Mafia.
Chi deve portare rispetto non ci si può presentare da soli ad un altro amico nostro.
No one can present himself to another of our friends. There must be a third party to do it.
The commandments hark back to the mafia's fledgling years in the lemon groves of rural Sicily. Legend has it the mafia was born of revolution. In the 1800s, a tight-knit band of landowners offered protection to local people from oppressive Spanish rule. But the mafia soon discovered that protection is an easy way to make money. When the Spanish king left, the mafia turned to crime. In the early 1900s, America opens its shores to the poor, the weak, and the hungry. Hidden among millions who seek a better life in the New World, the mafia arrives too. By now, it's an underground tribe with its own codes and rituals. Members are clannish and secretive. They talk in hushed tones of Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours. That's why Commandment number 1 sets out who can and can't belong.
Chi non può entrare a far parte di Cosa Nostra.
People who can't be part of Cosa Nostra are anyone with a close relative in the police. Anyone who behaves badly and doesn't hold to moral values.
You have to be invited to join the mafia. Outsiders need not apply.
You know, it's always best to be proposed to the life by somebody who was already in the life. And that normally would be a blood relative, or preferably would be a blood relative, because then, you know, you come from good stock and they know your background, they can trace you all the way back.
The commitment demanded is total.
Once you come into that life, you're allegedly a new creation in the life, and everything starts from that point on. So, you know, when you take that oath, you're in it forever.
Throughout the mafia's history, the main rule of admission is a simple one. You have to be Sicilian. Even Al Capone, arguably the world's most notorious mobster, was barred from full mafia membership because he had no ties with Sicily. Michael Franzese was born to the mob. His family is Sicilian. His father, Sonny, is a high-ranking member of the New York Colombo crime family. Sonny wants a different life for his son.
My dad didn't want me to enter the life. He wanted me to go to school, be a professional, and I was on the road to becoming a doctor. I was a pre-med student at Hofstra University in New York.
But when Dad is jailed on racketeering charges, Michael finds himself irresistibly sucked back into the family business.
My second or third year in college, I kind of got close to the boss at that time, Joe Colombo, and his sons, and they were kind of telling me, what are you doing going to school? If you don't get get on the street and make some money, your dad's going to die in prison. And
Franzese spends the next 2 years learning how to be a mobster. It's a tough initiation.
It's a very violent life, and you see things and you hear things, and if you're on call to do something, you got to be on call to do it. And it's all part of that kind of pledge period that you're in.
Despite his impeccable mob ties, Franzese faces the test posed by Commandment Number 1. His name comes before a meeting of the Crime Commission, the mob's ruling council in New York. The commission is made up of the bosses of the 5 most powerful mafia clans in America. Linked by powerful ties of kinship and brotherhood, the mafia call their clans families. Each of New York's 5 families is named after its original leader: Bonanno, Colombo, Gambino, Genovese, Lucchese. Now, their successors consider the fate of aspiring members.
Do you have any objections? Maybe a guy's not worthy, maybe he has something in his past, maybe he was a snitch at one time. And so that goes around and circulates throughout all the families, and hopefully you pass inspection, so to speak. But that's kind of the security that they use.
With the 5 families' approval, Franzese is finally about to be inducted, or made.
I got a call from my captain, and he said, I need you here at 9 o'clock that evening. It happened to be Halloween night, 1975. And he said, be on time and wear a suit.
Becoming a made man means taking part in a ritual over 100 years old.
Boss was seated at the head of like a horseshoe configuration. The underboss and the consigliere were to his left and right, and all the captains in our family were alongside them. I held out my hand. He took a knife, cut my finger, some blood dropped on the floor. And I cupped my hands. He took a picture of a saint and lit it aflame. It didn't hurt, it burned quick, it was just symbolic. And he said, tonight, Michael Franzese, you are being born again into a new life, into La Cosa Nostra. And if you violate what you know about this life or betray your brothers at any time, then you're gonna die and burn in hell like the saint is burning in your hands. Do you accept? Yes, I do.
Franzese is now a mafia soldier. He's on the lowest rung of the ladder. Above him stand capos, or captains, an underboss, and the boss himself. Made men call themselves men of honor. It's a title designed to command respect.
Within your community, within your neighborhood, among your peers, if you were a made guy, that really meant something.
Philadelphia crime reporter George Anastasia is from a Sicilian family and grew up in a traditional mafia neighborhood. Steeped in the culture of Cosa Nostra, he rubbed shoulders with the mob on a daily basis.
At least within a certain community, it meant something to be a man of honor. Especially if you're an immigrant and you don't have a lot of opportunities and you reach the top of your field. Look at me, I'm a man of honor.
Mobsters lived up to the man of honor title.
As a kid growing up, you see the guy with nice clothes or driving a nice car, and he takes bets and he's friendly and he'll give you $1 when you walk by, that kind of stuff. You didn't think about the treachery and the violence and the thuggery that I realize now is a major part of what all this is about.
During the 1980s, Michael Franzese rises through the ranks of the Colombo family. According to one magazine, he's among the top 20 most powerful mobsters in the U.S. But during his rise, the mafia undergoes a change. The mafia's business is expanding, and that means involving outsiders. The rules of membership begin to relax. The mafia begins to induct associates, men who do business with the organization, but who do not qualify for membership.
Guys made guys or proposed guys because they were making money with them, and didn't really know their background too well, didn't delve into it too well.
The ticket into the mob is no longer family origin, it's money. In Philadelphia, Ron Previte is a good earner and of Sicilian origin.
I always called myself a general practitioner of crime. I did everything there is. I didn't specialize in anything. I once told somebody I tried to commit a felony every day. That was what I did. I was a moneymaker.
In 1993, the burly Previte catches the eye of Philadelphia mob boss John Stanfa. Without ceremony, Big Ron is drafted into the mob.
We didn't have an induction ceremony. Stanford told me a bunch of rules. Treat the other members with respect. We won't fool around with somebody else's wife. Things of that nature. Things like I can now form a crew, and, nobody was supposed to go up against me. I'm a made guy. Nobody can hit me.
Previte is now part of Stanfa's inner circle, but there's a problem. Although his Sicilian heritage qualifies him for membership, Previte is an ex-cop, a fact that Stanfa decides to ignore.
That was his mistake.
John Stanfa is breaking one of the key commandments of the mafia. Anyone connected to the police cannot be a part of Cosa Nostra.
He's someone that was a policeman, whether a good policeman or a bad policeman. It's not supposed to be a member of the mob. It's against their rules.
Crooked or not, Previte is still a cop at heart. He feels no allegiance to the mafia. Within 2 years, he's wearing a wire for the FBI.
And yes, I did that. I wore the wire. I gathered information, and I testified in court. I had no compunctions about being a rat. The word don't bother me.
The mob's need to involve outsiders in its business leaves it vulnerable to the law. But the mafia has another commandment that aims to build the ultimate firewall for a secret society.
I never use the word mob, mafia, and just friends.
This program contains reenactments based on real events. The Mafia's 10 Commandments aim to protect the clan from outsiders, especially cops and informers.
Non ci si può presentare da soli.
No one can present himself directly to another of our friends.
Un terzo a farlo.
There must be a third person to do it.
There's always a middleman. But if you are just an associate off the street, you're not talking to the captain, never. And if you walked up to him to talk to him, he'd walk away.
The second commandment contains an implicit threat. Your life is on the line for every introduction you make.
The person who makes the introduction is ultimately responsible for the person they introduce. So if that person goes bad, it goes dirty on them, the person who made the introduction pays the price for that.
Personal introduction is the lifeblood of mafia business. At its height in the 1970s, the FBI estimates a mafia membership of over 3,000 made men nationally, with up to 25,000 associates. To guard against eavesdropping cops, most mafia business is done face-to-face.
The safest method of communication was a personal meet in a park, quite empty, or walking around the block. Usually no more than 2, maybe 3, but never in large groups. And conversations sometimes were in a foreign language, usually Italian, depending on who it was and their respective backgrounds.
Despite meetings being held on the move, mobsters call them sit-downs, a throwback to the days before police wiretaps forced them outside. There's usually a lot to discuss. Different families do business side by side in the same neighborhoods, jostling each other while chasing the coin.
It was kind of whoever got there first got there. In other words, if the Gambinos happened to be doing a lot in Manhattan, I wouldn't have to get out of there because that was their territory. It wasn't geographical.
Because there is no turf, encounters between rivals are frequent. The sit-down resolves conflicts before they turn violent.
Everything in that life is a sit-down. No matter what it is, it's a sit-down. And that was with disputes with other families, disputes within your own family. Everything was a sit-down.
According to the commandments, maid members who know each other by reputation, but who have not formally met, must be introduced by a third party.
If I didn't know another maid guy, we had never met, we'd have to have a third member of the family, either one, his or mine, that knew the two of us. And he would introduce us by saying, Michael, amiga nostra, or a friend of ours, so-and-so. And once we were formally introduced, then we could discuss as maid guys. But you couldn't go up to somebody, even though you knew he was maid and he knew you were maid, you couldn't go up to him and introduce yourself as a maid guy, no.
This curious etiquette comes with its own coded language. Now in witness protection, this former Bonanno soldier uses the alias Tony.
When you say he's a friend of ours, that means that he's made. He's a friend of mine means that you're an associate or that you have nothing to do with us whatsoever. And that's just basically telling, if you're talking to a made guy and you're having a conversation and somebody walks up and you said, this is a friend of mine, if they're talking about anything specific, they're gonna stop in front of him.
This rule was designed to block cops from getting inside the mafia. Former New Jersey state cop Fred Martins spent 6 years undercover trying to build a persona the mafia would trust.
The real thing that they were concerned about is who you were. That's why I say how difficult it was to get into a mob family.
For cops looking to bust the mob, the only hope is a formal introduction.
The most important thing was that you were vouched for by somebody, that somebody knew you, that somebody said he's an okay guy. Without that, you didn't get anywhere.
In the late 1970s, the DEA begins targeting a Sicilian mafia heroin distribution ring. Agents dubbed the case the Pizza Connection, because the Sicilians smuggle the drugs in pizza ingredients through restaurants across the country. DEA agent Frank Panessa takes on the task of penetrating the mafia crew behind the operation.
Sicilian heroin was being distributed all over the United States, all over the world actually. And the people that I was involved in, they were bringing in $1 million a day, every day. And nobody was into them because it was such a secret society.
Agent Panessa knows the key to infiltrating the highly secretive Sicilian mafia is an introduction from a made man, also known as a wise guy. Someone wise in the ways of our thing.
We had arrested 2 wise guys in Philadelphia and told them that, hey, either you cooperate with us or you're gonna go to jail. And so they said, well, we're not gonna give you anybody in the mob in Philly. And so we said to them, well, how about the Sicilians?
The Philly wise guys agree to introduce Panessa to 2 Sicilian heroin dealers, Wallo Laporta and Alberto Ficalore, seen here with Panessa in DEA surveillance pictures. Panessa must convince the pair he is a genuine man of honor. At a meeting in a South Philly restaurant, he begins his dangerous undercover role.
When the food came out, the wise guys served me first. And the Sicilians looked at that, and to men of honor, that means something. You know, the respect that they were showing me. They knew both of them were wise guys, so I must be somebody of greater importance. When I needed a drink, the wise guys would jump up right away and get me a drink.
The introduction goes well for the DEA. The deliberate betrayal of made men by other made men is a major breach of mafia protocol. Panessa gets to work exploiting it.
Months after that, I says, I'm into white powder. So the Sicilian said to me, well, why don't you tell us? We control all the powder. He says, who are you getting it from? So thank God I was in another undercover role in New York, buying off a wise guy in New York, and he hadn't been arrested yet. So I says, oh, I'm getting it from this guy in the Bronx, and I gave him the name, and he says, oh, he's one of our customers. He says, you don't have to go to him anymore, you go directly to us. And that's how it started. I was able to purchase heroin. My first heroin buy was for $85,000. And I think when they walked away from that particular buy, they felt good and they figured, well, this guy is legit.
The Pizza Connection investigation breaks up a massive drug distribution ring. In just 9 years, the mafia has smuggled heroin worth $1.6 billion. When the busts go down, Panessa's Sicilian contacts, now aware he's an undercover agent, asked to see him in their prison cell.
I figured, well, you know, what are they going to say? Maybe there's going to be a threat. But they were very cordial. And Paolo said, you know, you were a gentleman. In all our transactions, there were business transactions.
But the meeting ends with a chilling warning.
He says, you don't have to fear us in any way, you know. He says, the people that introduced you to us have to be held accountable.
Panessa gets the message. He wastes no time in whisking the cooperating Philly wise guys into witness protection. The two mobsters escape the wrath of the mafia. Once the FBI breaches the mafia's firewall, it can wreak havoc. When that happens, the mob falls back on a huge resource: loyalty.
I'm on call all the time, you know, like a doctor. You're on call all the time. No matter what it was dig a hole or put a bullet in somebody's head. You know, that's the way it was.
Once you join the mafia, it expects to own you, heart, body, and soul. The 10 Commandments make sure of it.
Si è il dovere, in qualsiasi momento.
Always be available for Cosa Nostra, even if your wife's about to give birth.
There is no vacation time in the mafia. There is no sick leave in the mafia. There is no 8-hour day in the mafia.
After his initiation in 1975, Michael Franzese is now a soldier for the Colombo crime family in New York. His captain, or capo, gives him the lowdown on what lies ahead.
When I was proposed into the life, I was told that I was on call to serve the family 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that meant, in the very words the boss used at that time, is if my mother was sick and she was dying, and I was at her deathbed, and the family called me to service, I had to leave my mother's side and come and serve the family, because the family was number one in our lives from that day forward.
Franzese now faces an endless round of cruising the streets. He has to come up with money-making schemes to share with his boss, or else. It's the way the mob works.
You had to play by the rules, and if you didn't, and if you weren't known as a hustler and a guy that, you know, followed the rules and followed orders and a guy that you can rely on, you kind of put on the shelf. And that's, to me, that was almost as bad as any other consequence that could happen.
When Franzese is called for Cosa Nostra duty, there are no excuses. He has to drop everything.
I certainly couldn't say, hey, I'm having fun with the kids right now, or I'm with my wife, you know, whatever it was, you got to drop everything and go. And the best policy I followed is I didn't make an excuse. I mean, unless there was some real emergency, I just dropped and went.
But one day, despite the utmost care, Franzese misses a meeting scheduled by his seniors by 10 minutes. After chewing him out, his boss reschedules.
So the next day, I was called again, told to meet It was kind of like our headquarters at the time, and to be there at 3 o'clock. I got there at 3, and I was told to wait outside in front. They were going to pick me up. Well, come 5:30, nobody showed up. I wasn't moving. I stood there. And it was about 6:45, I remember. The boss and the captain drove by and said, "You got the message?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Go home."
Francis is lucky to have gotten off with just a warning. He's never late for a meeting again. For mob associates who are lower down the pecking order, there are no second chances. Henry Hill, immortalized in the movie Goodfellas, is a former hijacker for the Lucchese family. As an associate, Hill must demonstrate his commitment on a daily basis.
Jimmy called me up, Paulie called me up. Come and meet me at the airport diner and wear a tie. I mean, make sure you got, a couple of pistols with you. Gotta go. I'm on call all the time, like a doctor. You're on call all the time. No matter what it was. It was dig a hole or put a bullet in somebody's head. That's the way it was.
Hill is running with a crew that shoots first and asks questions after.
Tom used to put notches in his pistol every time he used to kill somebody. Hey, I got 27, I got 32 notches. I mean, that's how sick these guys were.
He knows that tardiness will put his life at risk.
Yeah, and you made an appointment with those people, you better keep it. And don't. I mean, I seen John Gotti whack a guy in the head with a bat because the guy didn't show up for an appointment,
Being late shows disrespect. Even more, it signals unreliability. In the mafia, you have to know whom you can count on. This program contains short dramatizations based on events in the lives of our contributors. The mafia's need for loyalty extends even into mobsters' most intimate affairs.
Non si guardano mogli di amici nostri. Never look at the wives of friends.
It was a strict code that you wouldn't mess with another one's wife or daughter or anybody close to that maid person's family. I mean, a maid guy would not do that. I mean, he'd have to be out of his mind.
The penalties for breaking this commandment are severe.
It's supposed to be death, but it's been done. And sometimes the other guys got killed.
The male culture in the mafia has always made a show of respect for its wives. But this commandment is likely rooted in a practical need.
Were there rules? Yeah. You're not supposed to fool around with somebody else's wife? Of course. But is that because it's a moral choice, or is it because it creates instability within an organization and you don't want two guys fighting over a woman? You want those two guys out making money for you. So, there's a logical reason for these rules separate and apart from honor and morality. It's about the stability of the organization and the goals of the organization. Even though they're called the commandments and they appear to have some kind of basis in morality, it really was about business.
True to the traditional codes of honor, dalliances between made men and the wives of other mobsters are surprisingly rare. Colombo capo Michael Francis scrupulously avoided any possibility of being caught in a compromising position.
My own personal policy, if I went to visit another made guy and he wasn't home and his wife was there, I wouldn't go in the house. I mean, I wouldn't even enter inside because you never know,
The mafia models itself on the extended family, and like most families, Cosa Nostra is fueled by gossip. In a world of sit-downs and whispered conversations, rumor is rife. If a mobster does have an affair with another mobster's wife, it soon becomes common knowledge.
It's like water cooler, in an office, basically, And no matter what you did, someone's gonna find out about it anyway,
Fooling around with the wife of a superior is considered suicidal by soldiers and associates. But for senior members, a liaison with the wife of someone of lower rank carries far less risk.
I remember a wiretap we had, and you hear one guy say to another guy, I want you to go to such and such a place, call me when you're leaving, okay? About 20 minutes later, the guy gets a call and he says, I'm on my way out the door. He says, okay, now it should take you about 4 hours to get, 2 hours down and 2 hours back. He says, yeah, I'll let you know when I get down there, and I'm heading back. So about 15 minutes later, there's a call to the guy's apartment, and you hear the guy say to the wife, did he leave? And she says, yeah. He says, I'll be right over. Don't even put any underwear on. So the rules are broken quite a bit.
Perhaps the most important commandment is written between the lines. There's one rule for the boss, quite another for those below him. As the next commandment decrees, underlings just have to suck it up.
You don't make complaints about the boss. It's not smart. No matter what it is, you keep quiet and that's it.
The criminal underworld is built on lies. Yet the mafia's commandments demand that underlings tell the truth, especially when it's the boss who's asking.
Quando si è chiamati a sapere qualcosa si dovrà dire la verità.
When asked for any information, the answer must be the truth.
You weren't supposed to lie to him, or tell a little white lie even.
I don't know, I only told the truth when it was in my favor. But if it wasn't gonna go the right way, I lied like a bastard.
Telling lies is a part of life on the street. Lies protect you from the cops. Lies can boost your reputation. They can save your life.
I had plenty of times my captain told me, hey, lie, don't admit to this, don't admit to anything. My father told me growing up, don't ever admit to anything, keep your mouth shut. So, it's part of the life.
But knowledge is power. Bosses can only keep on top if they know what's going on.
Mob guys lie to their bosses just like everybody lies to their bosses, okay? Mob guys deceive their bosses, they deceive their underlings, okay?
In the mafia, truth is a moving target. Bosses expect their soldiers to lie. They put their trust in those who they think will lie to them the least.
If you go to a sit-down, and it's two guys and a captain, say the captain knows one guy for 30 years, and he knows the other guy for 2 years. No matter what the guy says that he knows for 2 years, he's gonna be wrong.
Sometimes, the boss's lie-detecting radar lets them down. From 1981 to 1987, Colombo family capo Michael Francis runs a lucrative gasoline tax scam. Francis sets up companies selling gas wholesale. By law, the companies are liable for tax of up to 35 cents a gallon. Francis simply doesn't pay it.
How did we get away with it? Very simple. The government was very archaic in collecting their money. If you didn't pay them after the first quarter and send in a report, they would contact you by mail. Now remember, now every day that goes by, the register is ringing. That money's coming in every single day. Long story short, you could string them out for about 9 to 10 months before they come down. They're gonna do an audit, they're gonna get mad at everybody. By that time, office is closed, you're using the next company. And it was just a daisy chain. We just kept going from one license to another. And we did this for 7 years and they just couldn't catch up to us.
At the height of his operation, Francis was selling 500 million gallons of gasoline a month.
We were pulling in between $8 and $10 million a week in gasoline tax money, so it was a lot of money.
But Francis's bosses suspect he's not giving them a fair cut. They summon Francis to a meeting.
I had to meet this guy, Jimmy, on 18th Avenue and was late, about 11 o'clock at night. And I'll be honest with you, I'm sitting in a passenger seat, Jimmy's driving, I got somebody behind me. I'm pretty nervous. I don't know if this is gonna be my last ride or not with everything that was going on. I'm saying, what the heck do these guys think that's going on? When I got out of the car and went into that room, and when that door was gonna open, I can vividly remember, I didn't know if that was gonna be the last thing that I saw.
Francis knew that if his bosses thought he was lying, they wouldn't hesitate to kill him.
You know, we heard, Michael, maybe you're making more money than you bring it in, and, you know, you got any ideas of, you know, being your own guy and a family? And I said, this is all nonsense. What are you talking about? I said, you got any proof? Bring it forward. I said, I'm making more money than anybody ever made for this family. I said, I'm not threatening you guys in any way. If the guy that I'm partners with gets in trouble, he doesn't know anybody, I'm the only guy he can take down. I said, this is a win-win situation for you guys, and I'm being questioned on this. And that's basically what I said. And I said, there's no truth to it whatsoever. And there wasn't any.
Francis managed to win over his audience. He was off the hook.
So, you know, oh, yeah, okay, great, everything's good. You know, he left, we kissed, we hugged. But it made an impression on me. Didn't sit well with me.
For Francis, it was a watershed moment. From this point on, he begins to have doubts about his devotion to our thing. But of course, he doesn't say a word.
And that's kind of how my path changed.
Sometimes, lies can suit the boss's purpose. The biggest elephant in the room for the mafia is drug dealing. During the 1970s, Henry Hill begins dealing heroin. The brown powder comes from Sicily, smuggled in goods bound for local restaurants. The heroin arrives pure. Dealers like Hill mix it with additives to make it go further and enhance the profit.
1 kilo would make 30 kilos, the street, you know, so you figure it out. I mean, you pay $250,000 for a kilo, times it by 30.
Heroin presents a money-making opportunity too good to miss. Hill is overwhelmed by the returns.
The money was so blinding, you know, I mean, it just, it was intoxicating. You walk around with, you know, 10, 15, 20,000 in your pocket, you know, and blow it that night, you know, go to a crab game or go to track with $30,000, $40,000.
But there's a catch. According to mafia rules, drugs are off limits. The reason? Too high profile, too many people involved, too risky.
Do not deal in drugs. It brings too much heat. It develops too many sources for law enforcement, and it'll corrupt our own, meaning their own mafia members.
The mafia's old guard disapproves of drugs. It doesn't square with their self-image as protectors of the community. But greed overtakes traditional values.
They came up with the excuse, well, we didn't tell you to sell dope, when in fact they were expecting that money to come in, you know. They all knew that dope was being sold, but they would always admit, oh no, we didn't know that you were selling dope.
Hill has to lie to his boss, Lucchese Capo, Paul Vario.
I remember Paul asked me once, you know, you in the drug business? No, are you kidding me? I don't even smoke. Don't do that, you know?
Nevertheless, Hill is careful to make sure Vario gets his cut.
Paul, you knew. I mean, every week I used to bring a shopping bag full of money to him, you know? $5,000 a week.
When mobsters deal drugs while pretending not to, they break the commandment about truth. When bosses take a cut from the proceeds, the mafia's traditional values start to crumble.
We can get a list on the rules that were broken along the way. And there are guys who could fill up a book. The bosses, they have broken more than me.
The mafia is built on a strict hierarchy, held together by respect.
I mean, it was basically set up just like any major corporation.
Whoever the boss is, you must bow to his authority.
And mob guys do expect to be respected when they're dealing with underlings.
The next commandment is all about respect for rank. When that breaks down, it often has fatal consequences.
Si rispettano in maniera categorica gli
Appointments must be respected.
Philadelphia, the 1990s. the city's mafia family is leaderless. A new generation stands poised to take control. 31-year-old skinny Joey Merlino heads a faction the newspapers call the Young Turks. He and his crew have deep Philadelphia roots.
They were the sons and the nephews and the cousins of the Scarfa organization. They were loyal to one another. You ask them about these commandments, that meant nothing to them. The loyalty was the guys they went to grade school with.
Merlino expects to inherit the boss's mantle, but the commission, the mob's ruling council in New York, doesn't agree. It decides to back a more mature candidate, 53-year-old John Stanfa. Stanfa has lived in Philly for over 20 years, but he's from Sicily. He's not a Philadelphia native. New York sees Stanfa as a safe pair of hands, but the Merlino faction resents his appointment.
There are certain mob bosses that don't get the respect that they should get. And he was seen kind of as an outsider, and the homegrown mob guys had no respect for him. In fact, they basically took him on, okay?
Things are made worse by a clash of style. Merlino and Stanfa have very different ideas about what a boss should be. Stanfa keeps a low profile. He runs a pizza joint by day and the rackets by night.
Stanfa was from Sicily. He was an old greaser, an old mustache Pete, you know? He wasn't very flamboyant, but he was mafioso through and through.
By contrast, Merlino loves publicity. He hires a cameraman to record these behind-the-scenes glimpses of his daily routine.
Joey wasn't a traditional boss, so to speak. Joey liked to gamble. Joey liked the nightlife. Joey liked to go out.
When Stanfa makes Joey Chang Chinglini a Merlino sidekick, his underboss, the Merlino group gets angry. They see the appointment as a move to split their ranks. Stanfa has made Joey Chang a target. March 2nd, 1993. At 5:58 a.m., an FBI surveillance camera picks up a car pulling up outside the luncheonette that serves as Joey Chang's base. Inside, a wiretap records what sounds like a scene of carnage. Unknown gunmen shoot Joey Chang 5 times. Chang is hit in the head, neck, and chest. Amazingly, he survives. No one is charged for the shooting. Stanfa sees the hit as a challenge to his authority. As boss, he must uphold the chain of command. He calls Tommy Gambino, a leading member of the Mafia's crime commission in New York. The pair speak in a Sicilian dialect, but by now, the FBI is well on the trail. This is the English transcript of the conversation, voiced by actors.
These guys are a bunch of lousies. I just want to put their heads taken off. To tell you the truth, they'll brand themselves. So they're not here because of that. What do they have? Now, if they can commit to give me a hairpinner, whatever do. The only thing they needed are unknown souls. Like I said, we're at your disposal. Whatever you need.
But Gambino is blowing smoke. The commission doesn't interfere in disputes within families.
The notion of a franchise probably best characterizes what the Mafia was about here in America. It wasn't a corporation in the sense that the headquarters out of New York or wherever controlled everything. They didn't. They basically made that person, sanctioned that person as the boss, and then it was up to that person to run that family.
Stanfa realizes he has to make the next move on his own. On August 5th, 1993, a Stanfa gunman spots Merlino walking with Joey Chang's brother, Michael. Michael Cianglini dies at the scene. Merlino escapes with a flesh wound. The Philly mob braces itself for war.
It was a bad time, you know. I didn't even sleep in my bed. I was sleeping on the floor. I put a couple pillows in there because you never know when a bomb was going to come through the window. It was just a bad time.
3 weeks go by. It's 8 a.m., August 31st, 1993. Rush hour. Stanfa and his son Joe are taking the expressway into downtown Philadelphia. Behind the wheel is Fred Aldrich, another of Stanfa's bodyguards.
We knew there was going to be retaliation, just how and when. So you're always looking in your rearview mirror and your two side mirrors, all the time. And I picked up this van, and I just didn't like the looks of it. And it caught my eye. And all of a sudden, I seen the guns start flashing. And I said, John, we're being hit, and I pushed him down. And I turned around on Joey, and boom, he got it through the side window, and he went down.
Joey Stanfa has taken a bullet in the cheek. Aldrich takes evasive action.
I played with stop and go with him, you know. I stopped and go enough to get behind him, right on the bumper.
The stop-start tactic works. Thwarted, the gunmen drive off. John Stanfa is unscathed. His son recovers, but Aldrich is appalled by the hit.
What they pulled on this Schuylkill Expressway was just the stupidest move I've ever seen in my life. I said, this is going to bring every authority, every badge in the world. You know, they could have killed 50 people. I said, you know, John, it's the beginning of the end.
Aldrich is proved right. The war attracts too much heat. The Philadelphia Mafia has lost sight of the traditional commandment: respect those appointed above you. For the Philly mob, the writing is on the wall.
It was about greed. It was about the almighty dollar. As long as you were bringing a bag full of money, you could have broke any rule that you wanted.
This program contains reenactments based on real events. The Mafia is all about making money by any means necessary. Yet the Mafia's own laws decree that you cannot lie for personal gain.
Non ci si può appropriare di soldi.
Money cannot be appropriated if it belongs to others or to other families.
It's a strange commandment for a criminal organization. Thou shalt not steal.
You lie, steal, cheat, do whatever it takes to make money, bring it into the family, but don't do it among us.
Of course, the commandment only relates to mobsters stealing from each other. According to the FBI, the Mafia earns a staggering $100 billion a year, more than Boeing, Coca-Cola, or even Microsoft. The mob makes its money in 1,000 different ways.
Got a little shylocking business, a little bookmaking business.
The junket operation, the unions, the food industry.
We take the tail car first, and then we take the truck. You know, and those 40-foot trailers are worth a couple $1 million a piece.
If something was stolen, had to be sold, I did it. Gambling was the backbone of it. People loved to bet, people loved to gamble.
We had a lot of people on the inside.
Just to walk in the kitchen with a pistol, go through the kitchen, go into where the registers were, rob everybody and leave. I did it many times.
In the Mafia, money flows from the bottom up. It's called kicking up. Associates pay a slice of their earnings to soldiers, who in turn pay a percentage to their capos, and so on, up the chain.
If I'm your capo and you're kicking up to me, and I can kick something up to the boss, everybody's happy.
At the top of the money chain is the boss.
Yeah, you always got to take care of the boss. I mean, he always got an end.
Henry Hill is a former associate of the New York Lucchese crime family. his capo always took an equal slice of the take.
If it was 4 guys involved in the hijacking, you know, he always got a full end, so it was 5 guys. You know, if we wound up with 100,000, we'd all get 20,000 apiece. But he always got his, you know, full end.
To earn his cut, the boss only has to nod. His blessing is a kind of insurance policy against rival mobsters.
Do what you got to do. Clear it with us, but you know, anything that's out there, go do it. That's kind of the way it's organized.
Like a medieval prince, the boss only communicates with underlings through intermediaries. During the 90s, enforcer Fred Aldrich plays the role of courtier to Philadelphia mob boss John Stanfa.
Everybody would check in, and they would all come up to me, because, of course, I had John's ear. And I said, well, Tony came up with this idea, and he just smiled and said, okay. I said, Louis came up with a pretty good idea, you know. He said, okay, give him the go-ahead on that.
Once a scam has been approved, the earner must start kicking up an equal share to the boss.
The thought process is you come into that life and all of a sudden everybody starts throwing money at you, you become wealthy. And it's just the opposite. You come into that life, you start paying up all the time. You know, you got to earn your own way and support the family if you can.
Bosses expect a verbal account for every penny. It's called going on record.
Allegedly, that's for security reasons. So if another member of another family tries to make a move on your business, it's on record and they can't do that. So that's one reason, but technically, this way they know everything you're doing, and you gotta pay up.
Failure to pay is considered theft. Former Bonanno soldier, Tony, is now in witness protection. He is one of the few men to have cheated his boss and lived.
Christmas came first in my house. Then, I would kick up my money to where it was supposed to kick up.
In 1999, Tony begins extorting porn shops in Lower Manhattan. Porn makes for soft targets.
I'm not gonna walk into, a store with an old lady and an old man, making pottery. I'm gonna go into a business that I know functions in the gray area of the law. Those are the type of businesses that you can go in and you can extort them every week.
Tony's technique is simple and brutal.
I go in, I introduce myself, start becoming friends with the guy. And I tell him, listen, if anybody ever tries to come in here, I know how this business is. If anybody ever tries to come in here and butcher you or tries to shake you down for money, call me. I'll be more than, I'll help you out. And then a week later, I send a kid in there with a baseball bat.
Tony is soon making good money, but he decides to carve his capo out of the loop.
I would make my weekly collections, and my captain took it upon himself, because he thought he was getting robbed every week, to go and visit these bookstores and talk to the people directly. He found out I was robbing them. He found out I was taking everything.
Tony is marked for death. In the mafia, it's a tradition that the man who kills you will be known to you.
Half of these guys I know since, they were at my baptism. But once you know that you're gonna get clipped, they don't recall it, they don't take it back. It's not, they don't send out emails and say, okay, you know what, we changed our mind, we had donuts and coffee with this guy, he's all right, and we're gonna let him live,
Months go by, nothing. For Tony, it's business as usual.
And then one night they finally caught up to me. I was in a bar, walked out onto the street, lit a cigarette, and the car pulled up. They shot at me probably 15, 18 times, I don't know, a lot of times.
Tony makes a run for his apartment.
I didn't know if they were gonna come there afterwards or, I just sat there in my kitchen on the floor. I had a couple of guns there, I sat there and I just waited. sounds crazy, but what was going through my mind is that Santa Claus is coming to kill me, because I remember the captain playing Santa Claus when I was a kid. I mean, I'll never forget that thought.
Tony evades the hitmen that night, but his brush with death makes him question his loyalties. Soon after, he is cooperating with the FBI. Not everyone is so lucky. In Philadelphia, in 1981, Frankie Flowers Delfonso, a major bookmaker and mob associate, is refusing to kick up money to new mob boss, Little Nicky Scarfo.
But with Nicky, you know, he wanted Frankie Flowers to know that there's a new sheriff in town and that you need to pay.
At the time, Eugene Milano is a Philly mafia soldier.
Frankie said that I'm not doing any business, and if I was, I would kick in. Well, Philadelphia may be a big city, but within our life, everyone knows what everyone's doing.
Scarfo orders Salvi Testa, one of his capos, to teach Frankie Flowers a lesson. Testa takes Milano along.
Sal told him, Frank, listen, we know what you're doing, and you need to kick in. This is your last warning. Still didn't listen.
In October 1981, Testa lures Frankie Flowers to a meeting near his home, close to the 9th Street Italian Market.
Sal hit him with a baseball bat, and I had about a 16-inch piece of steel, and we beat him pretty bad. He was in the hospital for a long time.
But the beating doesn't yield the expected result. Flowers still refuses to pay. Hoping to curry favor from the boss, Scarfo's capos begin planning murder.
After that, I think the only other punishment was death. I was put on the squad along with 4 or 5 other guys to kill Frankie Flowers.
But Milano's face is too well known in the narrow streets of South Philly.
People knew me in that neighborhood, so I went to my captain at the time and I told him, listen, it's not good. I mean, it's just, you know, if you don't get away, it's not worth it. And they eventually took me off. And then the murder was carried out by some other individuals.
Frankie Flowers Delfonso is eventually murdered in July 1985. 2 gunmen shoot him down outside a cigarette store in the heart of the Italian Market in broad daylight. Milano is jailed for conspiracy to murder in 1987.
If you're in illegal business in South Philadelphia, you need to pay.
Respect underpins much of the mafia's codes. But when it comes to mobsters' personal lives, respect can be a double-edged sword.
You treated your wife, the mother of your kids, properly, but when you're out of her presence, you know, you fooled around.
This program contains material that may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. For many Italian Americans, the family is the cornerstone of their lives. Scenes of home life like these are something many mobsters dream of. The family offers a refuge from a criminal lifestyle. Yet mobsters often betray the thing they claim to value most.
Si ci deve portare rispetto alla moglie. Wives must be treated with respect.
Wives take center stage in most mobsters' households. When a made man gets married, he stays married. That is, until death do us part.
You had to respect your wife and your family. Loyalty was not only to your Don, but to your family. And you didn't make a fool of your family.
FBI agent Patrick Colgan encountered this powerful code of respect when he and a partner went to arrest a mobster at his home.
We knocked on the front door, and the wife answers the door, and we said, "Where's your husband?" "We're with the FBI. We have a warrant for him." And in broken English, she said, "He's not here." And we asked if we could come in and look around the house. And she became very agitated, and she was cursing at myself and my partner in Italian. So I responded to her back in Italian, in language that I will not use here. With that, she goes away from the door gasping for air. 30 seconds later, her husband, the fugitive, comes to the door with his jacket in his hand, opens the door quickly, and he says to both of us, both agents, "Come on, let's get out of here." So we said, "Joey, why so fast?" He said, "I'd rather go with you guys than put up with her all day, because you dishonored her by cursing at her in Italian." I said, "Well, she did it to me first." He said, "That doesn't matter. I was supposed to defend her honor. I didn't. I'd rather spend the day with you guys in jail."
But respect does not necessarily include fidelity. When it comes to the women in their lives, mafiosi hold a double standard.
You treated your wife, the mother of your kids, properly. You took care of your family. You respected her when you were in her presence. But when you're out of her presence, you fooled around.
To prove his manhood, a mobster must have a gumbata, mafia slang for mistress.
I saw guys with girlfriends for years and years and years. They had double lives, so to speak. It just came with the territory. We were out in clubs every night. We were high rollers. For some reason, we were attractive numbers to the girls. We always had women around us, and they always wanted to party with us and be with us. And, you see, when you like, she becomes your girlfriend for a while.
In the 60s and 70s, New York is the place to be seen. The city has some of the world's top nightclubs, the Copacabana, Studio 54, and the mob is there to enjoy it.
There were the Gambinos, and then there were the Bananas, and the Lucchese's and the Colombos. So everybody, they all had their own section, basically, at those clubs.
But one night of every week is special. On Saturdays, mobsters make a show to each other of being respectable, and that means going out with their wives.
Well, Saturday and Sunday were wives, and any other time was girlfriend or anybody else you happen to be with. And that was pretty prevalent among everybody that I knew, at least at that time.
For mob associate Henry Hill, the arrangement could lead to complications.
Say Diana Ross was at the Copa, Naturally, your girlfriend wanted to see it, and your wife wanted to see it. But Saturday night was strictly for wives. You didn't go to the Copa with your girlfriend on a Saturday night. That was a no-no. So that's what you did. It could be that if you had 3 girlfriends, you had to see the show 3 times,
Wives, for the most part, understand and accept the arrangement, as long as their husbands show respect by not rubbing their affairs in their faces.
You tried to keep the wives and girlfriends away from each other, and they all knew. It was, But, as long as you brought the square home, had the private schools and the maids and, everything they wanted, it eased a lot of the aggravation that you would get, if you found lipstick on your collar or something, stack of 50s, here, go shopping, leave me alone.
But some mobsters flagrantly breach this rule. When the FBI steps up surveillance of the mafia in the 1980s, agents begin digging up more than they bargained for. Paul Castellano is boss of the New York Gambino family. At the age of 70, he falls for the family's housekeeper. Castellano carries on the affair under his own roof. In so doing, he dishonors his wife, Nina. It's an unforgivable lapse of mafia protocol. And the FBI hears it all. When the feds bust him for racketeering in February 1985, Castellano gets the picture. He knows he's revealed mafia secrets on the phone. But when he learns what the FBI has on his affair, he gets really worried.
He was very concerned after he learned of the electronic devices in his house. He was more embarrassed and very concerned about the fact that he had had a penile implant when he was somewhat older in life, presumably to take care of this paramour. And he was more embarrassed about that information coming out to his peers and the subordinates than he even was about the girlfriend.
Castellano's reputation as a boss is at stake. The wiretap compromises his very manhood. When news breaks of the affair and the boss's implant, it rocks the Gambino's tight-knit world. A rival decides now is the time to make a play for Castellano's crown. In December 1985, Castellano is out on $3 million bail. He and his underboss Tommy Bellotti take time out for a meal at this steakhouse in Manhattan. They don't make it to the front door.
The killers just waited and observed Castellano's car, and as he got to the front of Sparks, opened fire and killed them both.
Castellano's rival can now take control of the Gambino family. His name, John Gotti. Gotti gets to the top by flouting the commandments. But as he will learn, pride comes before a fall. This program contains short dramatizations based on real events in the lives of our contributors. Secret papers discovered in 2007 reveal the Mafia's code of honor. The so-called 10 Commandments talk of morals, truth, respect. Qualities that seem at odds with the business of crime. Commandment number 9 has a pretty clear message.
Non si frequentano né taverne e né circoli. Don't go to pubs and clubs.
Yet it's impossible to enforce.
I mean, my life was in a pub or a club. I mean, 6 nights a week I was out in some kind of club, either in Manhattan, Long Island, or wherever I happened to be at that time, anywhere in the country. So I don't know where that one came from, but we certainly didn't follow that.
Mobsters and bars go together like whiskey and soda. The pub or club is a prime spot for doing business.
You know, in every area, there was always, 4 or 5 clubs owned by wise guys. There was always something going on, If you had a load of mink coats or something, and the guy couldn't get rid of them, maybe you could get rid of them. He was always networking.
But this commandment has a deeper meaning. Secret societies shouldn't put themselves in the spotlight.
My uncle did what he did the old-fashioned way. He wasn't looking for publicity. He wasn't, and he always told me, that's where the trouble is. The trouble's in the bar. Trouble's in the club. That's where you're gonna run into people. You're gonna drink, you're gonna let your guard down.
To be successful, mobsters have to keep a low profile. That, at least, is what the rules say.
The old guys didn't want to be known. They wanted to be low-keyed, okay? They wanted to basically be under the radar screen.
But what might work in the hills of Sicily doesn't work in the big cities of the U.S. By the 1980s, mobsters are stepping away from the traditional mafia codes and beginning to spread their wings.
The newer guys coming up all wanted to develop a reputation. The old guys were understated. The newer guys are overstated.
A younger generation of mobsters are taking their cues, not from the commandments, but from the silver screen.
The younger guys, in many respects, are too flash. They've actually adopted the roles they see in movies, like Wise Guy, okay, The Sopranos, Donnie Brasco. I think it played into their whole persona.
They wanted the flash, they wanted the glitter, and that's almost the antithesis of what these commandments are about and what the mafia is supposed to be about. It's supposed to be a secret society.
One man, more than most, signifies this change in mafia values. John Gotti. Gotti is a gangster about town. He revels in the media spotlight. He talks the talk. He dresses the part. The press calls him the Dapper Don.
I mean, I like John a lot. He made no bones about who he was. He was a gangster, didn't want to be anything but a gangster. He acted it 7 days a week, 24/7.
Colombo capo Michael Franzese rises through the ranks at the same time as Gotti.
You knew that he was going to be the boss or die trying.
Gotti assumes control of the Gambinos in a blaze of gunfire and publicity. In December 1985, he orders the murder of the incumbent boss, Paul Castellano. The brazen assassination on a Manhattan sidewalk gives the press its first taste of what is to come. When the FBI bugs the Ravenite Social Club, Gotti's headquarters in the heart of Manhattan's Little Italy, the Dapper Don defiantly holds court on the sidewalk. A string of Gambino soldiers and capos start showing up. Under the tough conspiracy law known as the RICO Act, gangsters face jail simply for meeting and talking about crime. Gotti is walking a tightrope. A high-stakes game of legal cat and mouse follows. The feds lay charges of racketeering. Gotti's lawyers get them overturned. Always, Gotti has a quip and a smile for the camera. Many people love Gotti's don't give a damn attitude. The Dapper Don becomes the Teflon Don, so called because prosecutors can't get any charges to stick.
He was making a mockery of law enforcement, and people in law enforcement, in particular the FBI, made a concerted effort to once and for all make a case that would stick against John Gotti.
Eventually, Gotti slips up. In 1990, the FBI record him making a chilling phone call.
You tell this punk, me, John Gotti, to sever your head off.
Threatening murder is the smoking gun prosecutors need. On December 11, 1990, the feds raid the Ravenite Social Club, where the Dapper Don holds his court. Gotti goes into custody. After 2 years of legal wrangling, Gotti is finally convicted of murder and racketeering. His fans are not happy. Gotti dies of throat cancer in prison in 2002, burnt out in part by his love of the limelight.
Undoubtedly, Gotti made a mistake. You don't deal in the open and flaunt who you are in the media, talking to reporters. Organized crime never did that before.
The spotlight of publicity also falls on Colombo capo Michael Franzese. At the height of his criminal career, Franzese is making millions from his illicit scams. The media in New York dub him the Yuppie Don.
Yeah, Yuppie Don, that was a media tag that they gave me. Boy, I didn't like that. I don't like the term yuppie, but I guess because I was young and I was into business and wore the suits and I had a fair amount of success. I mean, the guys on the street wouldn't dare call me that because they knew I didn't like it.
Franzese gets out of New York and heads to Florida. He sets up in a new business, movie production.
Yeah, we produced a movie. It was kind of a breakdance type of film, musical, a lot of music and dancing. And I used a lot of the at-risk kids because we filmed in some bad neighborhoods, some gang-infested neighborhoods.
This time, the publicity Franzese gets is good. The mayor of Miami Beach is thrilled that Franzese's movie is keeping kids out of trouble and gives him the key to the city.
Our police department, as well as the rest of the city, is delighted to have you, and any courtesies that they can extend to you, they will be happy to do so.
Franzese can barely keep a straight face.
What they didn't realize at the time is I opened up a big gas operation down in Miami, Florida. So they give me the key to the city on one end, and we're stealing all that tax money on the other.
But at a wrap party for a movie, his secret life is about to become public.
They said, we have an interview, Mike. The local television wants to talk to you a little bit on the way out. And I was tired. I said, okay. Brian Ross, who was an NBC reporter. I didn't recognize him. I didn't know who he was. And he starts saying, talking a little bit about the party and so on and so forth. And next thing out of his mouth,
the FBI says you're a member of the Colombo mafia family.
I knew, where he was coming from at that point. My partner got upset. He jumped up and ran away.
Here to talk to the kids.
And I just answered the questions.
Like I said, the FBI can allege and say whatever they like. They've been doing it for many, many years.
It was, that's when it started to really unravel.
Francise's outing on national TV soon draws heat from the law. In 1985, prosecutors charged Francis with 87 counts of racketeering, fraud, and tax evasion. He faces a life sentence.
I knew that if I did go to trial and lose, my life was over.
His lawyers cut a deal.
We negotiated a plea agreement where I would get a 10-year prison sentence. Figured back then they had parole. I would do 5 on the 10 maybe. I had a $15 million restitution, a $5 million forfeiture of assets, and went off to do my time.
Francis serves 6 years. Before he goes to jail, he gets married and makes a decision.
I met this young girl who I was, really enamored with. If I were going to spend time with her and have a future with her, it wouldn't work with this life because they wouldn't leave me alone.
Francis vows to quit the mafia. Up till now, the only way out of the mob is in a wooden box. But by the 1990s, rather than do serious jail time for RICO crimes, many gangsters begin to turn away from Cosa Nostra into the arms of the FBI.
The main part of the deal is that they were going to keep me alive. I guess that's a pretty good deal.
It's the biggest sin in the mafia's 10 commandments, and mobsters learn about it at their mother's knee. Whatever else you do, don't rub shoulders with the law.
Even as kids growing up, we didn't rat each other out. It was just the way it was, You didn't go and run and tell your aunt what your cousin did or whatever it might have been.
Non si fanno comparati o patti con gli altri sbirri. Never be seen with cops.
The mafia's commandments are designed to remind mobsters to do everything they can to avoid being seen with cops.
I grew up hating the police. My dad always taught me growing up that, you can't want to be a police officer or like the police because they took an oath to lock up their own parents and their relatives. So I grew up really hating the police.
But when tradition fails, bosses have another tool at their disposal. Fear. In the battle against organized crime, FBI agent Patrick Colgan witnesses firsthand how Gambino boss John Gotti intimidates his subordinates.
I did have an informant very close to Gotti, but he was petrified of Gotti. Absolutely petrified. Gotti would kill you simply because he got up on the wrong side of the bed, much less become worried that one of his henchmen were cooperating with law enforcement.
When Agent Colgan's informant is identified in court, he skips town, never to be seen again.
This gentleman had a wife and a 10-year-old son. Gave them up. He hasn't been seen in 25 years. Out of fear. Out of fear.
The Witness Protection Program is set up in 1970 to offer mobsters the chance of trading information in return for protection. Since then, nearly 10,000 of them have signed up. In 1980, Lucchese associate Henry Hill is busted for heroin trafficking.
Is it the fan? Is it the fan? And I knew I was a dead man then. Because if it ever went to trial, all of that stuff would have come out.
Police wiretaps have Hill implicating himself and his criminal bosses.
He was all over the wiretaps. They had like 2 million feet of wiretaps, tape recordings, and those guys would have been indicted too. So I knew that I was, completely a dead man.
Facing the prospect of life behind bars or death at the hands of his mafia bosses, Hill accepts an offer of help from the FBI.
It was the best day of my life. It was. I was so relieved. When they said I wouldn't put you in a witness protection program.
Under new identities, Hill and his family are moved to undisclosed locations in Nebraska, Kentucky, and Washington. In exchange, Hill testifies against 50 members of the Lucchese crime family.
And that's when I made the deal with them, and, I give them a lot of credit. They took care of me. The government did take care of me at the end.
Hill's decision to talk is still an unusual act in the early 80s. But within 10 years, gangsters begin to break the commandment about talking to cops in growing numbers. From the early 70s to early 90s, federal convictions for organized crime jump by an astonishing 450%. Thanks to RICO, fear of the law outweighs the power of the mob.
One of the reasons I see the life kind of crumbling from within is because it was a life that was built largely on fear. And when the fear of the government in the United States became more powerful than the fear of the boss and the rest of the family, what happened? These guys started to cave in, started to tell, started to make deals, and it's happening now in record numbers.
Traditions that have governed the mafia for decades are fading fast. Young mobsters no longer believe the mafia is worth doing serious jail time for.
When they got jammed up, and they're looking at a racketeering indictment and 40 years in jail, and the mafia is no longer a way of life but a way to make money, now you make a business decision. How do I cut my losses? Let me cooperate. And so we've seen it again and again and again. In Philadelphia, probably more than any other city, but per capita, we've probably had more cooperating witnesses, made guys on the witness stand, than any other mob family in America.
In Philadelphia, no one is a bigger mob rat than ex-cop Ron Previte.
I did whatever I had to do to survive all my life because I was the consummate hustler.
In 1993, Philly boss John Stanfa makes Previte his bodyguard. Big Ron repays Stanfa's trust by wearing a wire. Previte has no faith in the mafia's rules.
Well, probably at one time before I was around and you were around, the rules may have applied. But I guarantee those rules were broke every day of the week. Twice on Sunday.
In 1995, Previte's evidence helps the FBI convict John Stanfa on charges of racketeering and murder. The Philly boss is sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms. With Stanfa behind bars, Previte targets Stanfa's rival, Skinny Joey Merlino. In 1999, the ex-cop's testimony sends Merlino down for drug trafficking. He's still in jail. Previte's loyalty is only to himself.
When you're a thug and a gangster, what rules do you have? You're stealing, you're robbing, they're selling drugs, you're doing everything wrong. The truest expression I ever heard is there's no honor among thieves.
Perhaps because it has strayed from the commandments that once governed it, the mafia in America today is on the ropes. In place of honor, loyalty, and respect, there's only greed.
All these guys are interested in is making money. They're not interested in all this respect no more.
The mafia has lost touch with its origins.
All the rules were out the window.
By the 1990s, the younger generation of mobsters are no longer loyal to the idea of the mafia. To them, the 10 Commandments have no meaning.
If you talk to half of these guys that run around today, you showed them that list, they wouldn't know what you were talking about.
The mafia's golden age is over.
I think back in the 40s and 50s, those rules were used and they applied. And loyalty and honor were a part of that. And This generation, as we come to the end of the 20th century, into the 21st century, none of that applied anymore. It's not a part of who the experience is. Now it's about making money. It's not about being part of a secret society or an honored society, you know, men of honor. I mean, that's a phrase that you still hear, but I don't think it means anything anymore.
Some former mobsters feel betrayed.
There are guys who are on the street who gave their life to that life that are broke. And you know what? No one cares they're broke. No one cares that they participated in 2 or 3 murders for them. Or maybe they saved their life.
The old mafia insurance policies are no longer paying up. When a mobster goes to jail, his family is supposed to be looked after.
One of them brought my wife $50 one day. A guy who I probably made $2 million with. Brought my wife $50.
Tony's bosses abandon the guiding spirit behind Cosa Nostra. The mafia takes care of its own. Disillusioned, many mobsters decide to quit the rackets. Today, Henry Hill has left the Witness Protection Program. Safe in the knowledge that he's outlived his enemies, Hill paints and writes for a living.
You know, now that I look back at it and I'm so detached from that life, I can't believe, you know, when I see, you know, that stuff on television or the movies, you know, how I was a part of that thing. You know, I just find it so weird, you know.
Gene Milano is still in witness protection, grateful for the second chance it offers.
I think there's a lot of people out there that just don't know how good it is to go to work every day. You know the paycheck you're getting. You know your parameters. You're spending what you can spend, what you can't. That's lost in that life.
But some find it hard to let go.
Regrets that I walked away from the life. You know, I really struggled with that for many years. I felt like I had betrayed an oath, even though I knew the oath was wrong. It was so ingrained and embedded in me that I had a real hard time dealing with that.
Michael Francis never informed on fellow mobsters. He's done something worse. He's revealed Cosa Nostra's beating heart.
What I know about the life obviously is in my mind and my heart. I'm not going to forget it to a large degree. And you're in it for life. That's the understanding.
Even in its twilight years, the mafia doesn't forgive or forget.
I don't underestimate those guys. And I guess if they were really determined at this point, I could still be in trouble. I'm in a club, you know, guys hang out in clubs. Maybe one of them spots me in there, makes a call back to New York. You know, he's got ties back there, and hey, guess who's here? Francis is here. He wants to be a hero. They give him an order. I walk out to the parking lot, boom, I'm gone.
Francis may yet become a victim of the code he once worked so hard to uphold. The commandments no longer hold sway in the mafia, but the violence that once enforced them is still very real.